The room was filled with laughter. Not the warm kind, the cruel kind that cuts into your chest and stays there. 1,000 voices echoed through the chandelier-lit ballroom as a pregnant woman stood trembling in the center of it all, her hand instinctively shielding her belly, her other hand clutching the torn edge of her gown. And the man who had promised to love her forever? He was smiling. "Do it," he said calmly.
Pourrit.
The crowd leaned forward. Phones lifted. History was about to be recorded. The mistress, young, polished, dripping in diamonds, raised the crystal bowl above the woman's head, her lips curling with satisfaction. "Show everyone," the man added, his voice sharp, rehearsed, merciless. "Who actually deserves to stand beside me?" The liquid came crashing down, ice cold, soaking her hair, her face,
Her body.
The shock made her gasp, and the baby inside her kicked hard, as if screaming. Laughter erupted. Someone whistled. Someone zoomed in. And just like that, the woman realized something terrifying. Not a single person in that room was going to save her. Not one. She looked at her husband through blurred vision, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm carrying your child." He didn't flinch. Instead, he raised his glass. To new beginnings. What none of them knew, what no one in that ballroom realized, was that this humiliation was being watched.
From outside.
From blacked-out hypercars idling silently in the snow. And the men inside those cars? They weren't guests. They weren't police. They weren't friends. They were the kind of men who didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They ended lives quietly. And the moment that punch hit her skin, 3 doors opened at once. Before this story continues, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what happens next isn't just revenge. It's a lesson about power, family, and what happens when you humiliate the wrong woman. 7 years earlier, she had walked away from everything that was supposed to protect her. Her name was Isabella. Back then, she wasn't standing under crystal chandeliers or drowning in humiliation. She was standing in the rain outside a small cafe, holding 2 paper cups of burnt coffee, laughing at a man who couldn't stop apologizing for being late. That man was Marcus. He had nothing then. No power. No money. No name anyone respected. Just ambition wrapped in charm. "I swear," he'd said, brushing rain from his hair, eyes full of hunger and hope. "One day, I'll build something so big the world won't be able to ignore me." And Isabella believed him. Because Isabella always believed in people. She believed in broken things, in potential, in love that needed patience. What she didn't believe in, what she had spent her whole life running from, was control. She was born into a family that ruled quietly.
No headlines. No flashy scandals.
Just power that moved cities, shifted markets, and made men disappear when necessary. 3 brothers. Older.
Sharper.
Dangerous in different ways. They raised her after their parents died, wrapped her in protection so tight it felt like a cage. They checked every man who looked at her too long. They ran background checks on boys she dated. They saw threats everywhere. And when she brought Marcus home for the first time, they saw him immediately. Not as a man, as a parasite. "He's using you," her oldest brother said bluntly. "He's hiding something," another warned. "You're smarter than this," the third added quietly. Isabella snapped. For the first time in her life, She felt like they weren't protecting her. They were doubting her. So she did the one thing they never expected. She chose Marcus. She married him quietly. She cut off contact, changed her number, blocked their emails, ignored the letters that came anyway. She told herself she was free. That love meant choosing someone even when everyone else said not to. And for a while, it almost felt true. She helped Marcus get meetings, introduced him to investors she wasn't supposed to, smoothed doors that should have stayed closed. Every win he celebrated felt like their win. Every success tasted like proof. See, she'd think, they were wrong. But success changed Marcus. Slowly, silently. He stopped thanking her, stopped asking her opinion, stopped touching her unless someone was watching. And when she got pregnant, something dark settled behind his eyes. He didn't celebrate. He calculated. By the time they stood in that ballroom 7 years later, surrounded by power he hadn't earned, Isabella wasn't his wife. She was his weakness. And weaknesses embarrassed men like Marcus. So he decided to erase her.
Publicly.
What he didn't know, what he could never have imagined, was that the brothers she thought she'd lost never stopped watching. They never stopped watching her. Not for a day. Not for a second. Even when Isabella cut them off. Even when she changed her name on paper. Even when she vanished from their world, she was still theirs. The eldest brother was known on the streets as the architect. He didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten. He built systems so airtight that by the time you realized you were trapped, you were already ruined.
Ports.
Shipping lanes. Private security firms that answered to no one official. If something moved in the city, he knew. If money changed hands, he saw it. The second brother? They called him the ghost, because people crossed him once and never appeared again. No records.
No bodies. No closure.
He handled problems personally, quietly, permanently. The youngest? The most dangerous of all. Not because he was violent, but because he controlled information. Media.
Banks. Courts.
He didn't break bones. He broke reputations. And together, they weren't businessmen. They were the kind of men powerful people pretended didn't exist. For 7 years, they respected Isabella's choice. They hated Marcus, despised him, but they stayed back because Isabella asked them to. So instead, they did what predators do when they're waiting. They observed. They documented. They prepared. They saw Marcus's financial eyes, the shell companies, the hidden accounts. They saw how Isabella slowly disappeared from public events, how her smile dulled, how her light dimmed. They saw bruises she explained away, excuses she repeated like prayers. And still, they waited, because the moment they stepped in, she would run again. Until tonight. Tonight, a call came through, not from Isabella, from a voice shaking so badly it barely formed words. "She's pregnant," the caller whispered, "and he's humiliating her in front of everyone." Silence filled the room. 3 men stopped breathing. The architect stood slowly. Where? A location was sent. The ghost was already reaching for his coat. The youngest brother was already opening feeds, live streams, hundreds of phones, 1,000 people watching a woman break. They saw the punch fall. They saw Isabella flinch. They saw her wrap her arms around her stomach. And something ancient snapped. 3 engines started. 3 black hypercars rolled into the snow. And as they watched Marcus raise his glass, the architect said only one thing. Tonight, we end him. The ballroom doors didn't just open. They slammed. Hard enough to rattle the chandeliers. The laughter died mid-breath. 1,000 conversations collapsed into silence. 3 men stepped inside.
No announcements. No shouting.
Just presence. The architect entered first, tall, calm, eyes scanning the room like a map already memorized. His suit was flawless, but his expression was cold, surgical. The ghost followed. He didn't look angry. That was the terrifying part. And then the youngest brother came in last, phone in hand, already typing, already changing lives with a few silent taps. Isabella didn't turn at first. She was still shaking, still dripping, still staring at the floor like it might open and swallow her, until warmth touched her shoulders. A jacket. Heavy.
Familiar.
She looked up, and her world cracked open. You came. The architect didn't answer. He just pulled her gently toward him and whispered so softly only she could hear. You're safe now. Across the room, Marcus finally noticed. The smile slid off his face. Not because he recognized them, but because the entire energy of the room had shifted. Servers froze. Security stopped moving. Important men suddenly avoided eye contact. Who the hell are you? Marcus snapped, trying to regain control. This is a private event. The youngest brother looked up from his phone. Not anymore. A pause. I bought the hotel. Gasps rippled. The ghost took one step forward. You humiliated our sister. Another step. You touched her without consent. Another. And you did it while she carried your child. Marcus laughed nervously. You're bluffing. The architect smiled. Just once. That's when the FBI walked in. And everything Marcus built collapsed in real time. Marcus didn't scream. He didn't run. Because men like Marcus always believe they can talk their way out. Let's be rational, he said, forcing a laugh as agents stepped closer. There's been a misunderstanding. The youngest brother turned his phone toward the crowd. A screen lit up the far wall. Bank transfers. Shell accounts. Hidden properties. And then, a second family. Photos. A woman holding 2 children. Time stamps. Dates overlapping his marriage. The ballroom erupted. Scarlett's hand slipped from Marcus's arm. What is that? She whispered. The ghost answered calmly. Your replacement. Scarlett backed away. I didn't know, she said quickly. I swear. The architect's eyes cut to her. You knew enough. Security finally moved. Not to help Marcus. To restrain him. His knees buckled. This is insane, he shouted. She trapped me with the pregnancy. The room turned. Isabella flinched. The ghost moved instantly. You will never speak about her again. His voice was quiet.
Deadly.
That's when the agents cuffed Marcus. And in that moment, Scarlett realized she was alone. Disposable. And next, Isabella didn't feel strong. She felt hollow. As Marcus was dragged away in handcuffs, the ballroom didn't erupt in cheers. It didn't clap. It stayed silent. A silence far worse than laughter. Because now everyone understood what they had witnessed. And what they had allowed. Isabella stood near the exit, wrapped in her brother's coat, her wet hair clinging to her cheeks, her gown heavy and ruined against her body. Her baby shifted inside her, a sharp reminder that no matter how broken she felt, she couldn't fall apart.
Not now.
Not completely. She looked back once. Not at Marcus. At the crowd. At the women who had whispered behind their hands. At the men who had laughed too loudly to impress him. At the phones that were still raised, recording not to help, but to consume. Her chest tightened. I let this happen, she thought. Not the humiliation. The isolation. She had pushed away the only people who would have stood up for her, until it was almost too late. Outside, cold winter air hit her face like a slap. Snow had begun to fall, soft, quiet, indifferent. The valet opened the door to the hypercar, his hands shaking. Isabella hesitated. She felt like a child again.
Small.
Ashamed.
Broken.
What if I really am weak? She whispered. What if I chose wrong because I'm flawed? Aiden stopped.
Turned.
Knelt in front of her, so their eyes were level. Bella, he said gently, gripping her hands. Listen to me. You didn't fail because you loved someone. You were betrayed because you trusted. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. Her composure shattered. She sobbed, quietly at first, then violently, years of guilt and regret pouring out as her brothers held her upright when her legs gave way. Inside the ballroom, Scarlett was screaming now, threatening lawsuits, demanding her phone, demanding Marcus look at her. He never did, because the moment he lost power, she became invisible.
Just like Isabella had been.
The car door closed. The engine purred. And as the hypercar pulled away, Isabella pressed her palm to the glass, watching the hotel fade behind her. She didn't feel victorious. She felt like someone who had survived something she never should have endured. And for the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself to admit the truth. She hadn't been strong on her own. She had been surviving without oxygen. And tonight, she finally breathed again. The city lights blurred past the windows as the car cut through the snow-covered streets. For the first time since the ballroom, Isabella wasn't shaking. She sat quietly between her brothers, wrapped in warmth, wrapped in silence that didn't judge her. The baby shifted again, gentler this time, and instinctively, Isabella placed her hand over her belly. I'm still here, she whispered.
Not to them.
To herself. Miles noticed. You okay? He asked softly. She nodded, then hesitated. No, she admitted. But I will be. The words surprised her. They felt unfamiliar. Hope often did after prolonged pain. At a red light, the city reflected in the windshield. Glass towers, neon signs, life continuing as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something irreversible. I spent 5 years thinking I had to prove something, Isabella said quietly. That I didn't need anyone. That love meant choosing one person and burning every bridge behind me. Grayson exhaled slowly. That's not love. That's isolation. She swallowed. I see that now. Aiden glanced at her in the rearview mirror. What changed? Isabella thought of the punch bowl, the laughter, the way her body had curled inward to protect her child. I realized something in that room, she said. Marcus didn't break me tonight. He just revealed what was already broken. Silence followed. Not heavy. Respectful. I let myself believe I deserved less, she continued. Less kindness. Less protection. Less honesty. Her voice steadied as she spoke. But my daughter won't grow up thinking love hurts like that. All three brothers turned slightly toward her. She'll know what respect looks like, Isabella said. She'll know what accountability looks like. And she'll know that walking away from cruelty is not failure, it's courage. Miles smiled faintly. That's our sister. They arrived at the Harrington estate just after midnight. The gates opened silently, the driveway blanketed in fresh snow. Isabella stepped out of the car, paused, then turned back.
Thank you, she said.
For coming, even when I didn't deserve it. Aiden shook his head. You never stopped deserving us. Inside, the house felt the same. The same staircase she'd slid down as a child. The same framed photos on the wall. Family vacations, birthdays, holidays she'd missed.
Her room was ready.
Fresh linens. A small crib already assembled. She stared at it, stunned. You prepared this? She asked. Grayson nodded. We've been hoping. Her throat tightened. Later that night, alone in the dim room, Isabella sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed herself to think about tomorrow. About lawyers. About headlines. About rebuilding. But for now, she placed both hands on her belly and whispered, You're safe. And for the first time since she'd walked away 5 years ago, she believed it'd be why morning. The story was everywhere. Not gossip blogs. Not whispers. Every major outlet. Chicago tycoon arrested at anniversary gala after public abuse of pregnant wife. Billionaire network exposes fraud ring live at elite event. The Harrington brothers and Marcus Drake's empire in one night. Isabella watched the headlines scroll across the screen from the quiet safety of her childhood living room. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She felt still. Centered. Marcus's mugshot appeared next. His perfect smile gone. Tie crooked. Eyes hollow. The man who once told her she was nothing without him now looked like nothing without power. Miles muted the TV. They're asking for a statement, he said gently. Isabella nodded. I'll do it. Aiden looked up sharply. Are you sure? Yes, she said. Not for revenge. For closure. The press conference was scheduled that afternoon. The Harrington Media Center overflowed with cameras, reporters, analysts. Isabella stepped to the podium alone. No brothers flanking her. No protection visible. Just strength. I won't relive what happened, she began calmly. You've already seen enough. Murmurs rippled. But I will say this, she continued, placing her hand over her belly. Abuse doesn't always look like bruises. Sometimes it looks like laughter while someone is humiliated. Sometimes it looks like silence from a room full of people. The room stilled. I believed love meant endurance, Isabella said. That loyalty meant staying quiet. That independence meant cutting myself off from everyone who cared about me.
She paused.
I was wrong. Flashes exploded. I am not ashamed of loving. I am not ashamed of leaving. And I will never again mistake cruelty for strength. She lifted her chin. My daughter will grow up knowing that dignity is non-negotiable. The room erupted. Applause. Not polite. Thunderous. Elsewhere, Marcus watched from a holding cell. No lawyer,
No Scarlett.
just the echo of his own downfall. His phone was confiscated, his accounts frozen, his empire gone. The final blow came quietly. A letter slid across the table. Marriage annulled due to bigamy. Isabella owed him nothing.
No explanation. No forgiveness.
He bowed his head. For the first time, no one was watching. The house was quiet in a way Isabella hadn't felt in years. Not the heavy silence of fear. Not the tense quiet of waiting for anger to explode. This was different. Safe. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Harrington family home, warming the hardwood floors she used to slide across in socks as a child. The same staircase where Aiden once carried her on his back after she broke her ankle. The same living room where Grayson used to read her stories when nightmares wouldn't let her sleep. She rested her hand on her belly. Her daughter kicked softly. "I'm home," Isabella whispered. And for the first time since she was 23 years old, she meant it. The weeks that followed, the world kept talking. But Isabella stopped listening. Marcus Drake's sentencing dominated headlines. 18 years in federal prison. Full asset forfeiture. Lifetime ban from real estate brokerage. Scarlett Hayes disappeared from Chicago overnight. Disbarred. Indicted. Reduced to a footnote. But Isabella never celebrated. She healed.
Slowly. Carefully.
With 3 brothers who hovered too much, argued too loudly, and loved too fiercely. Miles insisted on daily check-ins with her doctor. Grayson quietly replaced every security camera around the property himself. Aiden simply stayed nearby, always within reach. Isabella sat curled on the couch, blanket over her legs, fire crackling softly. Outside, snow fell in thick, gentle flakes, nothing like the brutal cold of the night Marcus humiliated her. Aiden handed her a mug of tea. "You don't have to be strong here," he said quietly. She broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just tears slipping down her cheeks as years of fear drained out of her. "I thought loving him made me brave," she whispered. "But staying nearly destroyed me." Aiden knelt in front of her. "Walking away is the bravest thing you've ever done." Grayson added softly, "And coming home." Miles smiled. "That took courage too." She laughed weakly through tears. "I really thought you'd hate me." Aiden shook his head. "We hated the man who hurt you, never you." 6 months later, the room smelled of antiseptic and hope. Isabella gripped Aiden's hand as pain surged through her. Grayson paced. Miles pretended not to panic. Then, a cry.
Small. Strong. Alive.
Charlotte Rose Harrington, the nurse announced. Isabella sobbed openly as her daughter was placed on her chest. "She's perfect," Isabella whispered. Aiden wiped his face without shame. Grayson turned away, shoulders shaking. Miles leaned down and kissed Isabella's forehead. "She'll never doubt she's loved," he promised. And they meant it. Marcus Drake spent his nights staring at concrete walls. Isabella spent hers rocking her daughter under soft lamplight. He lost everything trying to prove power. She gained everything by choosing dignity. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's peace. It's healing. It's realizing that the people you ran from were the ones who would have burned the world to keep you safe. Isabella kissed her daughter's forehead. You'll never beg for love, she whispered. You'll recognize it. And somewhere, far away, a man who mistook cruelty for strength would never understand why the woman he broke walked away whole.